The massive crystal dome of the Galactic Council chamber stretched high above the gathering of alien delegates. Sunlight from 3 different stars filtered through the transparent walls, casting rainbow patterns across the polished floor. Representatives from 12 ancient civilizations sat in their designated sections, their various forms creating a diverse tapestry of galactic life. Ambassador Kethara of the Veltar Empire adjusted her ceremonial robes and gazed down at the newest arrivals with barely concealed disgust. The humans had been granted membership only 5 years ago, after their primitive ships had stumbled into Veltar space during what they called an exploration mission. The very idea that these young creatures thought they belonged among the ancient powers of the galaxy was laughable. "The chair recognizes the delegation from Earth," announced Archon Zulmoth, his voice echoing through translation devices in dozens of languages. The ancient being's form was hidden beneath flowing robes, but his presence commanded respect from every delegate in the chamber. The Eternal Dominion had ruled for 80,000 years, making them the eldest civilization in known space. Sarah Chen, the human ambassador, stood and walked to the central podium. Her simple blue uniform looked plain compared to the elaborate costumes worn by other delegates. She carried a small datapad and appeared calm despite the weight of countless eyes upon her. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," Sarah began, her voice steady and clear. "I come before you today to request permission to present evidence of humanity's ancient heritage. We believe our species has a much longer history in this galaxy than previously thought." A ripple of quiet laughter passed through several delegations. Kethara exchanged amused glances with the Thracian representative, whose people had been spacefaring for 30,000 years. The idea that humans who had only developed faster than light travel 50 years ago could claim ancient heritage was absurd. "Ambassador Chen," Archon Zulmoth said with what might have been patience, "your species has provided detailed historical records dating back only 12,000 years. Before that, your people lived in caves and hunted with stone tools. What possible evidence could you have of ancient heritage?" Sarah activated her datapad, and holographic images appeared above the podium. The images showed ancient structures on Earth, massive stone pyramids, perfectly aligned stone circles, and intricate carvings that seemed to depict star maps. "These structures were built by our ancestors thousands of years ago," Sarah explained. "But their purpose and construction methods remain mysteries to us. The mathematical precision required to build them suggests knowledge far beyond what our ancestors supposedly possessed. We believe these are remnants of a much older human civilization." Kethara could not contain herself any longer. She stood, her forearms gesturing dramatically. "Honored Archon, surely we are not going to waste the Council's time with primitive stone stacking. My people were building stargates when these humans were still discovering fire." Laughter erupted from multiple delegations. The crystalline hegemony's representative produced harmonious chiming sounds that served as their form of amusement. Even the normally stoic voidwalkers seemed to find humor in the situation. "Ambassador Chen," said Counselor Yexhai of the Spiral Federation, his tentacles writhing with mirth. "Every young species goes through this phase. They discover they can arrange rocks in patterns and suddenly believe they descend from star gods. My people did the same thing 25,000 years ago. It's perfectly natural, but hardly evidence of ancient civilization." Sarah remained calm as the laughter continued around her. She tapped her datapad again, bringing up more images. These showed ancient texts and carvings that depicted humanoid figures among the stars, along with what appeared to be advanced technology. "Our legends speak of lost continents," Sarah continued. "Atlantis, Lemuria, Mu. We have stories of gods who came from the sky and taught us civilization. Every human culture has tales of visitors from the stars who possessed incredible knowledge and power." This brought even more laughter. Kethara was practically doubled over with amusement. "Legends. Fairy tales. Next she'll tell us about flying carpets and magic lamps." "Honored delegates," Sarah said, raising her voice slightly to be heard over the noise, "I understand your skepticism, but consider this. Every species in this council has similar legends. Ancient visitors from the sky, teachers who brought knowledge of the stars, gods who walked among mortals and then vanished." The laughter began to die down as delegates considered this point. Several representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Archon Zulmoth leaned forward, his ancient voice carrying a note of warning. "Ambassador Chen, Are you suggesting that some unknown species has been interfering with galactic development for millennia? That would be a serious accusation with significant implications. I'm not making accusations, Sarah replied. I'm simply asking the Council to consider the possibility that these legends might contain grains of truth. Perhaps there was once a spacefaring human civilization that explored this galaxy long ago, before something caused it to fall and forget. The chamber fell silent. The idea was preposterous, yet something about the humans' calm certainty was unsettling. Kethara found herself studying the ancient star maps in Sarah's presentation. They were remarkably accurate for a supposedly primitive species. Counselor Thexmar of the Silicon Lord stood, his crystalline form refracting light as he spoke. Even if we entertain this fantasy, where is the evidence? Where are the ruins? The artifacts? The technological remnants? You show us pictures of arranged stones and claim they represent an advanced civilization. The evidence may exist, Sarah said, but it would require extensive archaeological surveys of worlds throughout the galaxy. Worlds that have been dismissed as barren or unimportant because they show no signs of recent habitation. Preposterous, Kethara declared. We have surveyed thousands of worlds over the millennia. If there were ruins of an ancient human civilization, we would have found them by now. Sarah looked directly at Kethara, her expression unchanged. With respect, Ambassador, you've been looking for ruins that match your own architectural styles and technological signatures. What if the evidence of human civilization looks different than what you expect? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Several delegates began whispering among themselves, but the overall mood remained skeptical. Archon Zulmoth stood, his massive form casting shadows across the chamber. Ambassador Chen, the Council appreciates your passion for your species' heritage. However, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Stone arrangements and ancient stories are not sufficient proof of advanced civilization. Moreover, added Counselor Vexthul of the Hive Collective, her insectoid features clicking as she spoke. The genetic records are clear. Humanity evolved on Earth from primitive primates. There are complete fossil records showing this development over millions of years. There is no gap in the record suggesting an advanced prehistoric civilization. Sarah nodded respectfully. I understand the Council's position. However, I would like to formally request that any future archaeological surveys include examination for human genetic markers and cultural artifacts. If nothing is found, then our legends remain just that of buyer legends. And if something is found, Kethara asked mockingly, will you claim that humans once ruled the galaxy? Sarah's response was quiet but carried clearly through the chamber's acoustics. I would claim only what the evidence supports. Nothing more, nothing less. The human ambassador gathered her materials and returned to her seat among polite but dismissive murmurs. Most delegates had already moved on to other topics in their minds. The idea that humanity, Bowar, the youngest, most primitive species in the Council Dolmaro, could have ancient origins was simply too absurd to take seriously. As the Council moved on to trade negotiations, Kethara found herself glancing occasionally at the human delegation. There had been something in Ambassador Chen's voice, a quiet confidence that suggested she knew more than she was revealing. But the Veltar Empire had detailed records spanning 50,000 years, and nowhere in those records was there any mention of ancient humans among the stars. Still, as the session continued, Kethara couldn't shake the feeling that Sarah Chen's calm certainty had been more than simple wishful thinking. It had sounded almost like someone stating a fact they knew would eventually be proven true. The thought was ridiculous, of course, but it lingered nonetheless. Dr. Zendai brushed the dust from his protective suit as he emerged from the excavation tunnel. The Thracian archaeologist had spent the last 3 months on Kepler 442c, a dead world at the edge of Veltar space. The planet had been marked as barren in the galactic survey records, with no signs of life or civilization. It should have been a routine mineral survey, nothing more. But routine had ended 2 weeks ago when his deep-core drilling equipment had struck something impossible. Dr. Zendai to survey ship Bright Edge. He spoke into his communicator, his usually steady voice trembling with excitement. I need to speak with Captain Mordell immediately. Priority Alpha. Static crackled for a moment before the captain's gruff voice responded. What is it now, Doctor? Find another interesting rock formation? Captain, I need you to come down here and see this personally. And I need you to contact the Galactic Council. Immediately. The tone in Dr. Zendai's voice must have conveyed the gravity of the situation because Captain Mordell's response was much more serious. "I'll be down in 10 minutes. This better be important, Doctor." Dr. Zendai walked back toward the excavation site, his feet crunching on the dry, dusty ground. Kepler 442c had been dead for millions of years, its atmosphere long since blown away by solar winds. Only his environmental suit allowed him to survive on the surface. According to geological surveys, nothing had lived here for eons. Yet beneath 2 miles of accumulated sediment and rock, his equipment had found structures. The initial discovery had been accidental. His deep-core sampler had been designed to extract mineral samples from various depths, when it suddenly encountered an air pocket at exactly 2.3 miles down. Air pockets didn't form naturally at that depth on dead worlds. They were usually signs of underground chambers. Against standard survey protocols, Dr. Zendai had begun excavating. What he found defied everything he knew about galactic history. Captain Mordell's shuttle landed nearby, kicking up clouds of ancient dust. The broad-shouldered Veltar emerged wearing full environmental gear, his forearms moving in patterns that indicated both curiosity and irritation. "This better be worth interrupting my sleep cycle," the captain grumbled as he approached. "The Galactic Council doesn't like being contacted for routine discoveries." "Captain, nothing about this is routine," Dr. Zendai replied, leading him toward the excavation shaft. "I've been an archaeologist for 40 years. I've excavated ruins from dozens of civilizations across the galaxy. I've never seen anything like this." They descended in the mining elevator, passing through layers of sediment that told the story of millions of years. Dr. Zendai had taken samples from every layer during the excavation. The dating was consistent and impossible to fake. Whatever lay below had been buried for at least 150,000 years. 47 minutes to reach the bottom, Dr. Zendai explained as they descended. "The shaft had to be reinforced 3 times because we kept encountering pockets of that same strange air. It's almost as if the entire underground complex was designed to remain pressurized even after being buried." "Underground complex?" Captain Mordell asked, his irritation turning to curiosity. "You'll see." The elevator finally stopped, and they stepped out into a vast chamber carved from solid rock. Emergency lighting had been set up around the perimeter, casting long shadows across walls covered in intricate carvings. But it was the material itself that made Captain Mordell stop and stare. "What is this stuff?" he asked, approaching one of the walls. The surface appeared to be made of some kind of crystalline material that seemed to shimmer and shift in the artificial light. "I don't know," Dr. Zendai admitted. "It's harder than diamond, but it's not any material in our databases. The entire complex is built from it. But that's not the most interesting part." He led Captain Mordell deeper into the chamber, pointing out details as they walked. "Look at these carvings. Mathematical formulas, star charts, engineering diagrams. The level of sophistication is beyond anything we've seen from civilizations of this age." Captain Mordell examined the walls more closely. The carvings were incredibly detailed and precise, showing complex geometric patterns and what appeared to be star maps. "These star positions," he said slowly, "they match current galactic configurations, but they also show positions from thousands of years ago. How could anyone have tracked stellar movement with this precision?" "That's just the beginning," Dr. Zendai said, his excitement growing. "Follow me." They walked through a series of connected chambers, each more impressive than the last. The architecture was unlike anything in the galactic databases. Where most ancient civilizations favored either organic curves or rigid geometric shapes, these structures combined both in ways that seemed to follow mathematical principles beyond current understanding. "Dr. Zendai," Captain Mordell said carefully, "how extensive is this complex?" "Based on ground-penetrating scans, it covers at least 12 square kilometers. And that's just what we can detect from here. There could be multiple levels extending much deeper." They entered a chamber that took Captain Mordell's breath away. The walls were covered in panels that still glowed with a soft, pulsing light. Whatever power source had been built into the structure was still functioning after 150,000 years. "This is impossible," Captain Mordell whispered. "No civilization has ever built technology that could function for this long without maintenance." Dr. Zendai approached one of the glowing panels. "I've run every test I can think of. Carbon dating, quantum resonance analysis, stellar radiation decay patterns. Everything confirms the same age. But look at this." He showed Captain Mordell a series of samples he had collected. I found organic residue in several chambers, dried fragments that were preserved in the artificial atmosphere. I ran genetic analysis on them, and they're human. Captain Mordell stared at the samples as if they might suddenly transform into something more familiar. That's impossible. Humans have only been spacefaring for 50 years. Their own historical records only go back 12,000 years. I know, Dr. Zendai said quietly. I've run the test 6 times. I've checked and rechecked all my equipment. The results are consistent. These ruins are 150,000 years old and they were built by humans. The two stood in silence for several minutes, the implications slowly sinking in. If the findings were accurate, everything the Galactic Council believed about human history was wrong. More than that, it meant humans had achieved spaceflight and advanced technology long before any currently known civilization. Captain, Dr. Zendai continued, there's something else. I found this chamber yesterday. He led Captain Mordell to a room that was different from the others. Instead of carved walls and glowing panels, this chamber contained what appeared to be a massive crystalline structure in the center. It pulsed with the same soft light as the wall panels, but the rhythm was different, more complex. I think it's some kind of data storage system, Dr. Zendai explained. The energy patterns suggest it contains massive amounts of information. But I don't have the equipment here to access it safely. Captain Mordell walked around the crystalline structure, studying it from every angle. Dr. Zendai, if what you're telling me is true, this discovery will shake the foundations of galactic civilization. Every species will have to reconsider their place in history. I know. That's why I need you to contact the Galactic Council immediately. This requires a full archaeological expedition, with representatives from multiple civilizations. The implications are too significant for any one species to handle alone. Captain Mordell activated his long-range communicator. Bright edge to Galactic Council emergency frequency. This is Captain Mordell of the Veltar Survey Fleet. I need to speak with the High Council immediately regarding a discovery of extreme significance. The response came quickly. Captain Mordell, this is Council Communications. What is the nature of your discovery? Captain Mordell looked at Dr. Zendai, then at the impossible structures around them. We have found ruins that predate all known galactic civilizations. The evidence suggests they were built by humans 150,000 years ago. A long silence followed before the voice responded. Captain, please repeat your last transmission. We want to ensure we understood correctly. We have discovered ancient human ruins that predate all known galactic civilizations by at least 50,000 years. We need immediate council oversight and a full archaeological team. Captain Mordell, maintain your position and do not disturb the site further. A council investigation team will be dispatched immediately. Estimated arrival time is 72 hours. As Captain Mordell ended the transmission, he and Dr. Zendai looked around the ancient chamber. Somewhere in the crystal walls and glowing panels lay answers to questions they were only beginning to understand. But one thing was certain. The galaxy's understanding of human origins was about to change forever. Doctor, Captain Mordell said quietly, I have a feeling we've just opened a door that can never be closed again. The Council investigation ship Eternal Wisdom emerged from hyperspace near Kepler 442c with unprecedented cargo. The most skeptical and scientifically rigorous minds the galaxy could assemble. Ambassador Cathara stood on the bridge beside Chief Archaeologist Veltran, watching the dead planet grow larger on the main screen. She had volunteered for this mission specifically to debunk what was obviously an elaborate human hoax. Remember, she said to the assembled team, humans are clever and desperate to be taken seriously. They've had months to prepare this site. We're looking for signs of recent construction, modern materials disguised to look ancient, and clever tricks designed to fool our instruments. Chief Archaeologist Veltran nodded, his ancient form moving slowly as he studied the preliminary reports. As the galaxy's most respected expert on ancient civilizations, his presence lent serious credibility to the investigation. I've seen many attempts to fake archaeological evidence over the centuries. Young species often try to enhance their heritage with fabricated ruins. We'll examine everything with the most advanced detection methods available. Dr. Zix's, high from the Silicon Lords, had brought quantum analysis equipment that could detect the age of materials down to individual atoms. Counselor Mektar of the Void Walkers carried devices that could sense temporal distortions and energy signatures. The crystalline hegemony's representative, resonating at frequencies that could analyze molecular structures, completed the team of experts. The human claims are preposterous, Dr. HFY stated, her crystalline form refracting light as she spoke. 150,000 years would place these supposed ruins as contemporary with the earliest eternal dominion settlements. We would have detected such a civilization during our expansion period. The landing shuttle descended through the thin atmosphere toward Dr. Zendai's excavation site. As they approached, even the most skeptical team members had to admit the scale was impressive. The excavation covered several square kilometers, with multiple shaft entrances and a substantial support structure around the main dig site. Dr. Zendai met them at the landing pad, accompanied by Captain Mordell and a small team of Thracian technicians. "Honored investigators," he said formally. "I want to state clearly that I invite the most rigorous examination possible. I understand the implications of these findings, and I want them verified by the galaxy's best experts." Kithara studied the Thracian archaeologist carefully. He appeared genuinely confident rather than nervous, which was unusual for someone attempting to perpetrate a fraud. Most hoaxers showed signs of anxiety when faced with expert scrutiny. Dr. Zendai, Chief Archaeologist Veltran, said, "We'll need complete access to all areas of the excavation, all your equipment and all samples you've collected. We'll also be taking our own samples and conducting independent analysis." "Of course," Dr. Zendai replied. "I've prepared complete documentation of the excavation process, including continuous video recording of all major discoveries. Everything is available for your review." The team spent the first day examining the excavation site itself, looking for signs of recent construction or artificial aging. Dr. HFY's quantum analyzers confirmed that the sediment layers were genuinely ancient, with no signs of recent disturbance except for Dr. Zendai's careful excavation work. The sediment stratification is consistent with 150,000 years of natural accumulation, Dr. HFY reported. If this is artificial, it would require technology beyond current galactic capabilities to fabricate. Counselor Mektar's temporal detection equipment showed similar results. The time distortion patterns around the buried structures are consistent with extreme age. These readings cannot be faked with any known method. When they finally descended into the underground complex, even Kithara found herself speechless. The scale and sophistication of the construction was unlike anything she had ever seen. The mysterious crystalline material was harder than any known substance, yet it had been carved with precision that exceeded current engineering capabilities. "This architecture," Chief Archaeologist Veltran said slowly, studying the geometric patterns, "it doesn't match any known style in our databases. But the mathematical principles are advanced beyond most current civilizations." The team spread out to examine different sections of the complex. Each chamber revealed new impossibilities. Power systems that still functioned after millennia, air circulation that maintained breathable atmosphere in sealed chambers, star charts that showed accurate positions for celestial bodies across vast periods of time. Dr. HFY's analysis of the crystalline building material produced the first major shock. "This substance is not in any galactic database," she reported. "Its molecular structure suggests it was artificially created using techniques we don't understand. The material appears to be self-repairing and energy conductive at the quantum level." "What about the genetic samples?" Kithara asked, though she was beginning to dread the answer. Dr. Zendai led them to his analysis station, where he had prepared slides of the organic residue found throughout the complex. "I've run genetic analysis multiple times. The results are consistent and verified by independent testing. Under quantum microscopy, the genetic material was unmistakably human, but more than that, it showed variations that suggested an extremely advanced understanding of genetic engineering. These weren't the genes of primitive humans. They were the genes of humans who had modified themselves for enhanced intelligence, longevity, and adaptability to different environments." "This is impossible," Kithara said, though her voice lacked conviction. "Humans were primitive cave dwellers 150,000 years ago. Their own fossil records prove this." "Actually," Chief Archaeologist Veltran said quietly, "what if their fossil records are incomplete? What if there was a gap in human development that they themselves don't remember?" The investigation team continued deeper into the complex, and each new discovery challenged their understanding further. They found chambers filled with technology that was clearly functional, but operated on principles beyond current science. Energy conduits that channeled power through what appeared to be controlled quantum fields. Computing systems that seemed to process information at speeds that should have been impossible. But it was Counselor Mektar who made the discovery that changed everything. In the deepest chamber they had yet explored, he found what appeared to be a vast library. The energy patterns here are different, he reported, his void-touched senses detecting things the others missed. This chamber contains massive amounts of stored information. The data density is beyond anything we've achieved. The crystalline storage system covered an entire wall, pulsing with soft light that seemed to respond to their presence. Dr. Zendai had been afraid to attempt accessing it with his limited equipment, but the council team had brought the galaxy's most advanced data recovery systems. Dr. Zixhai, Chief Archaeologist Veltran, said, "Can your quantum analysis equipment interface with this storage system safely?" "I believe so," she replied, setting up her equipment carefully. "If this is truly a data storage system, we should be able to read at least some of the information without damaging it." The connection took several hours to establish safely. The storage system used principles that were similar to current technology but far more advanced. When they finally achieved access, the first files they recovered sent shockwaves through the entire team. The data was in multiple languages, including ancient forms of every major galactic language, but most significantly, it included proto-human languages that preceded anything in Earth's historical records. These linguistic patterns, Chief Archaeologist Veltran said in amazement, they show the development of human language over thousands of years. But they also show the influence of human languages on the development of other species' languages. As they accessed more files, the scope of the discovery became clear. The records spoke of humanity as spacefarers who had explored the galaxy extensively. They described encounters with primitive versions of every species currently in the Galactic Council. They told of humans who had served as teachers, guides, and protectors for emerging civilizations. According to these records, Dr. Zixhai said, her voice shaking, humans didn't just have an ancient civilization. They were the first spacefaring species in this galaxy. Every other civilization developed under their influence or guidance. Kethara stared at the data displays, her worldview crumbling around her. But what happened to them? If humans were so advanced, why did they become primitive? Why don't they remember any of this? The answer came from deeper in the data files. References to something called the Great Forgetting, an event so catastrophic that it forced humanity to abandon their technology and scatter across the galaxy as refugees. The record suggested that humans had deliberately suppressed their own memories and capabilities to hide from some threat. They didn't fall, Counselor Mektar said quietly. They hid. Something was hunting them, and they chose to become primitive rather than face it directly. As the investigation team continued to analyze the data, one fact became undeniably clear. Everything the galaxy believed about human origins was wrong. Humanity wasn't the youngest civilization in space. They were the oldest. Every other species had developed under human influence, guided by teachers they had mistaken for gods or spirits. And deep within the crystalline archives of Kepler 442c, the investigation team made discoveries that shattered their understanding of galactic history. Chief Archaeologist Veltran stood before a massive data display, his ancient eyes reflecting the soft blue glow of information that was older than any civilization he knew. "This section contains what appears to be historical records," he announced to the gathered team. "But the scope is beyond anything we expected." Dr. Zixhai's quantum processors had been working for hours to decode the complex data structures. The information was stored using principles that were familiar, yet far more advanced than current technology. "The storage density is incredible," she reported. "This single wall contains more information than the entire galactic database." Ambassador Kethara approached the display with growing unease. Each new discovery had challenged her assumptions about humanity's place in the galaxy. Now, as the translation programs began converting the ancient records into modern languages, she prepared for revelations that would change everything. The earliest records date back nearly 200,000 years, Chief Archaeologist Veltran said, his voice filled with wonder. "They describe human civilization at a level of advancement we can barely comprehend today." The records painted a picture of humanity that defied every known fact about their development. These ancient humans had not only achieved spaceflight, but had mastered technologies that seemed almost magical. They could manipulate matter at the quantum level, travel instantly across vast distances, and extend their lifespans indefinitely. According to these files, Dr. Zixhai said, studying the data streams, humans developed faster than light travel over 150,000 years before any other known species. They were exploring the galaxy when our civilizations were still evolving basic intelligence. But the records revealed something even more shocking. As the translation programs worked through thousands of files, a pattern emerged that made every team member question their own species' origins. Counselor Mektar was the first to understand the implications. These genetic markers, he said, studying biological data from the archives, they're not just human. They're also present in our own species' genetic codes. The team gathered around as Dr. Zixhai ran genetic comparison analysis between the archived human DNA and samples from each investigating species. The results were impossible to deny. Every species in the Galactic Council carried genetic markers that showed human influence. This suggests, Chief Archaeologist Veltran said carefully, that ancient humans played a role in the development of our species. Not just cultural influence, but actual genetic modification. The archives contained detailed records of human expeditions across the galaxy. They described encounters with primitive species on thousands of worlds. But these weren't conquest missions or colonial expeditions. They were something far more significant, guided evolution projects. The humans called themselves gardeners, Cathara read from the translated records. They found primitive species and carefully guided their development. Enhanced intelligence, improved physical capabilities, and accelerated evolution. The records showed that ancient humanity had found the ancestors of the Veltar Empire when they were still tribal hunters. Human scientists had subtly modified their genetic code to enhance intelligence and lifespan. Similar projects had been conducted with the ancestors of every major galactic civilization. According to this, Dr. Zixhai said, her crystalline form vibrating with shock, the Thracians received enhanced cognitive abilities. The Voidwalkers were given their temporal sensitivity. The Silicon Lords were modified for greater harmony with technology. Every species was changed by human intervention. Counselor Mektar studied records that showed his own people's development. The Voidwalkers' ability to sense temporal distortions wasn't natural evolution. It was a gift from human genetic engineers who wanted us to serve as guardians against threats from other dimensions. The scope of ancient humanity's influence was staggering. They had shaped the development of galactic civilization for tens of thousands of years. Every major species had been guided, enhanced, and prepared for eventual spaceflight under human oversight. But why? Cathara asked. Why would they do this? What was their purpose? The answer came from deeper in the archives, in records that spoke of an ancient threat. Files described entities from beyond the galaxy's edge, creatures of pure energy and malevolent intelligence that fed on civilizations. Ancient humanity had detected signs of their approach and had begun preparing the galaxy's defenses. They were building an alliance, Chief Archaeologist Veltran realized. Each species was enhanced with specific capabilities that would be useful in a galactic war. They were creating a coalition of civilizations that could work together to defend against invasion. The records showed that ancient humans had achieved something beyond technological mastery. They had learned to transcend the limitations of physical existence while maintaining their connection to the material world. They became beings of pure consciousness that could travel instantly across the galaxy and manipulate reality itself. This describes capabilities beyond anything we understand, Dr. Zixhai said, studying files about human transcendence. They achieved what we would call godhood, while remaining connected to physical reality. But the archives also revealed the price of such advancement. The transcendence process required abandoning much of what made them human. They became beings of vast intelligence and power, but they lost the emotional connections and individual personalities that had driven their original desire to help other species. The transcended humans became too detached. Counselor Mektar interpreted from the records. They could see the galaxy's needs from a cosmic perspective, but they lost touch with individual suffering and joy. They became guardians but not protectors. This led to a division within human civilization. Some embraced full transcendence and became cosmic guardians watching over galactic development. Others chose to remain physical beings, serving as the active protectors and teachers that emerging civilizations needed. The records described thousands of years of successful cooperation between transcended and physical humans. The galaxy prospered under their guidance, with dozens of species developing advanced civilizations that worked together in harmony. Then something went wrong. The threat they were preparing for arrived sooner than expected. Chief Archaeologist Veltran said grimly, reading through emergency records from the archive's final entries. And it was far more dangerous than they had anticipated. The enemy wasn't just from beyond the galaxy. They were beings that existed partially outside normal spacetime, making them nearly impossible to fight with conventional means. Worse, they could corrupt and control any sufficiently advanced technology or consciousness. The transcended humans were the first to fall, Kythera read with growing horror. Their enhanced consciousness made them vulnerable to mental influence. The enemy turned humanity's greatest achievement into their greatest weakness. Faced with the corruption of their transcended members and the approach of an unstoppable enemy, the remaining physical humans made a desperate choice. They couldn't fight the invaders directly without risking corruption themselves. Instead, they chose to hide. They deliberately regressed their own civilization, Dr. HFY said in amazement. They destroyed their own technology, suppressed their genetic enhancements, and scattered across the galaxy as primitive refugees. The process was called the Great Forgetting. Advanced humans used their mastery of genetics and psychology to remove their own memories and capabilities. They became indistinguishable from primitive cave dwellers, hiding among the species they had helped create. But they didn't just hide themselves, Counselor Mektar realized. They hid the evidence of their entire civilization. They made it appear as if galactic development had been natural rather than guided. The archives revealed that selected humans had been given the responsibility of preserving the truth in hidden facilities like this one. When the threat passed and it was safe for humanity to remember, these archives would serve as triggers to restore their heritage. The genetic modifications they made to themselves weren't permanent, Chief Archaeologist Veltran explained, studying the biological records. They were designed to be reversible when the proper conditions were met. The hidden archives contain the keys to unlocking humanity's suppressed capabilities. As the team absorbed this information, they began to understand the true significance of their discovery. Humanity hadn't just been an advanced civilization. They had been the galaxy's creators and protectors. Every major species owed their development to human guidance. And now, 150,000 years later, the conditions for humanity's awakening were finally being met. The threat that had forced them into hiding was gone, destroyed by their own transcended members who had sacrificed themselves to eliminate the corruption. The galaxy was ready for its guardians to return. The other species, Kythera said quietly, were not just allies or equals. We're their children, created by them, guided by them, and protected by them. Dr. HFY's analysis programs. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened 3 days after the investigation team returned from Kepler 442c, the great crystal dome that had witnessed so much mockery just months before now, hosted the most significant gathering in galactic history. Representatives from all 12 civilizations sat in stunned silence as Chief Archaeologist Veltran presented the evidence that would reshape their understanding of existence itself. The genetic analysis is conclusive, Dr. HFY reported to the assembled delegates. Every species in this council carries markers of human genetic modification. We are not separate evolutionary paths that coincidentally developed intelligence. We are the children of human science, enhanced and guided by their direct intervention. Ambassador Kythera found herself in the strange position of supporting the human claims she had once mocked. The evidence from the archives was too overwhelming to deny, too detailed to fake, and too consistent across multiple forms of analysis to dismiss. The implications are clear, she addressed the council, her forearms gesturing to emphasize each point. Humanity is not the youngest member of galactic civilization. They are its founder and architect. Every advancement we have made, every world we have colonized, every scientific breakthrough we have achieved has been built upon the foundation they provided. Archon Zolmoth sat in contemplative silence, his ancient form hidden beneath ceremonial robes that suddenly seemed less impressive. The Eternal Dominion's 80,000 years of recorded history paled before humanity's hidden heritage of 200 millennia. The question before us, the Archon said finally, is what we do with this knowledge. How do we tell our people that their gods were not myths but memories, that their greatest achievements were gifts from a species they believed inferior? The debate that followed revealed the depth of the crisis facing galactic civilization. Some delegates argued for suppressing the information, claiming it would destabilize their societies. Others insisted that the truth must be shared, regardless of the consequences. But before any consensus could be reached, Ambassador Sarah Chen requested permission to address the council. As she walked to the central podium, the other delegates noticed changes in her appearance and demeanor. Her movements seemed more precise, more purposeful. Her eyes held a depth that hadn't been there during her previous appearance before the council. "Honored members," Sarah began, her voice carrying a new resonance that seemed to reach every corner of the vast chamber. "I must inform you that the awakening process has already begun on Earth and our colonies. The discovery of the Kepler 442c archives was one of several trigger conditions programmed into our genetic suppression." A murmur of unease passed through the assembled delegates. Sarah's transformation was visible and unsettling. She appeared to be the same person, yet something fundamental had changed. 3 days ago, Sarah continued, ancient sites across Earth began manifesting energy signatures. Stonehenge, the pyramids of Giza, Machu Picchu, Easter Island, and dozens of other locations that we had always assumed were primitive monuments revealed their true nature as technological installations. Holographic displays activated around the chamber, showing real-time images from Earth. The ancient stone circles and pyramid complexes were glowing with the same soft blue light they had seen in the Kepler 442c archives. Energy patterns that had been dormant for millennia were coming back to life. "The effect is not limited to Earth," Sarah explained. "Similar activations are occurring on every world with significant human populations. Our colonies are reporting awakening events among their human residents." Councillor Thexmar of the Silicon Lords leaned forward, his crystalline form reflecting the holographic displays. "What kind of awakening events? What exactly is happening to your people?" Sarah's response carried implications that chilled every delegate present. "Humans are remembering. Our suppressed memories are returning. Our enhanced capabilities are reactivating. The genetic limitations our ancestors imposed upon themselves are being systematically removed." The holographic displays showed scenes from across human space. People who had been ordinary citizens the day before were demonstrating abilities that defied conventional understanding. Some could manipulate matter at the molecular level. Others showed enhanced cognitive abilities that allowed them to solve complex problems instantly. Still others displayed what could only be described as technopathic connections to electronic systems. "The process is accelerating," Sarah continued. "Each human who awakens helps trigger awakening in others through quantum entanglement effects built into our genetic code. Within weeks, every human in the galaxy will have access to their full heritage." Ambassador Cathera felt a chill of fear despite herself. "Ambassador Chen, what are the intentions of your awakening people? How will this affect relations between our species?" Sarah turned to face Cathara directly, and for a moment, the human ambassador's eyes seemed to contain the depth of eons. "The same as they always were, Ambassador Cathara. To guide and protect the civilizations we helped create. To stand watch against threats that might endanger the galaxy. But the balance of power," Councillor Yexahai of the Spiral Federation said, his tentacles writhing with anxiety. "If humans regain their ancient capabilities, what becomes of our independence? Our sovereignty?" "You misunderstand the relationship," Sarah replied gently. "Ancient humanity never ruled the galaxy through force or domination. They were gardeners, not conquerors. They helped each species develop according to their own nature and potential. The same principles will guide us now." Archon Zolmoth finally spoke, his ancient voice carrying the weight of millennia. "Ambassador Chen, you speak of threats the galaxy must be prepared for. The archives mentioned an enemy that forced humanity into hiding. Is this threat still present?" Sarah's expression grew grave. The immediate threat was eliminated by the transcended humans who sacrificed themselves to purge the corruption. But the galaxy remains dangerous. There are other entities in the void between galaxies, other dimensional intrusions that could threaten all life. Humanity's awakening is not just about reclaiming our heritage. It is about resuming our role as galactic guardians. The implications of this statement were staggering. The council delegates realized they were witnessing not just the restoration of an ancient civilization, but the return of the galaxy's protectors. The Awakening archives contained specific instructions, Sarah continued. Each species that was enhanced by ancient humanity was given particular capabilities for a reason. The Veltar Empire's extended lifespans make them ideal for long-term strategic planning. The Thracians' analytical minds are perfect for technological development. The Voidwalkers' temporal sensitivity allows them to detect dimensional threats. She gestured to encompass the entire council chamber. You were not randomly enhanced. You were carefully prepared to serve as humanity's partners in defending galactic civilization. The awakening of human capabilities is meant to coordinate with your own unique strengths. Dr. Zixai's crystalline form resonated with sudden understanding. We were designed to work together. Each species contributes what humans alone cannot provide. Exactly, Sarah confirmed. Ancient humanity learned that transcendence led to detachment from individual concerns. They needed partners who remained connected to the emotional and personal aspects of civilization. You provide the humanity that transcendence might cost us. As Sarah spoke, reports began arriving from across the galaxy. Human awakening events were occurring on every world, and the effects were spreading beyond the human population. The enhanced genetic markers that ancient humanity had placed in other species were also beginning to activate, triggered by proximity to awakening humans. The process is designed to be gradual, Sarah assured the increasingly nervous delegates. No one will lose their individual identity or cultural heritage. The enhancements are meant to supplement your natural abilities, not replace them. But even as she spoke these reassuring words, deep space monitoring stations began detecting something that chilled every delegate to their core. Ambassador Chen, Archon Zolmoth said urgently, our long-range sensors are detecting massive energy signatures at the galaxy's edge. Something is responding to the awakening process. Sarah's expression didn't show surprise, but rather grim confirmation. The awakening of human consciousness creates quantum resonances that can be detected across vast distances. Ancient enemies who were driven away but not destroyed have felt our return. The holographic displays shifted to show deep space sensor readings. Massive objects were moving in the void between galaxies, heading toward their spiral arm with purpose and intelligence. The test our ancestors prepared for is beginning, Sarah said, her voice carrying both strength and sadness. They hid us not just to escape destruction, but to prepare for this moment. The galaxy's real war is about to begin. As the delegates absorbed this revelation, they realized that the mockery and dismissal they had shown to human legends was about to be paid for in the ultimate currency. The galaxy's youngest species had just revealed themselves as its oldest and most powerful guardians, and something in the darkness was coming to test whether their preparations had been sufficient.